Hey there, folks. Welcome to Broadband Deployment News. So, do you remember Google's Project Loon? Maybe not, but that has led to some interesting technology using lasers to do wireless broadband, in a sense, or laser broadband. Pretty significant multi-gig backhaul through the air. Be right back. Thanks for joining me. Rick Husey here with Broadband Deployment News. So I thought this was pretty cool. I saw this on Doug Dawson's blog, Pots and Pans. You may be familiar with this. He's a broadband consultant and writes a lot here on his blog. So you see here, Google Moonshot delivering wireless backhaul. As it mentions here, you may recall a number of years ago when Google experimented with delivering broadband from balloons in an effort to labeled Project Loon. And it was kind of loony, when you looked at it. The project was eventually dropped, but a remnant of the project is now resurfaced as Taara, a broadband delivered terrestrially by lasers. Project Loon functioned by beaming broadband from a dirigible, I guess, to receivers on the ground. They really look like weather balloons. We'll see some pictures of them here in a minute. And Taara sprung out the idea of using those same lasers for terrestrial broadband. So they would launch these balloons, and they really would not stay up very long. They were happy. I think they were up for, like maybe it was close to a year. I can't remember. Well, look at it. I can't remember. But in any event, so they would have these balloons up there, and that you needed some way to communicate between the balloons. So if you're going to be beaming internet down to the ground, you've got to communicate between the balloons, and then you've got to get signal back down to the ground, up and down, right? So it's kind of like pre-Starlink, pre-satellite broadband, where you had a constellation of satellites instead of one geosynchronous satellite above a certain part of the Earth. So Starlink pulled that off, and obviously after that, it didn't make any sense at all to continue the Project Loon project. But there's still opportunities, I think, for Starlink to maybe do some longer backhaul, from wherever they have these lasers going out to these really remote areas. But in any event, it's kind of cool that they took part of what they were working on from Project Loon, and they're making use of it in a different way now. Project Loon functioned by beaming broadband from, again, dirigibles. Same lasers in this case. Taara claims to be able to beam as much as 20 gigs for 20 kilometers. That's about 12 miles. While that is impressive, the important claim is that the hardware is affordable and easy to install and align. The Taara effort came out of the efforts by Google founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin to form a division to work on moonshots, ideas that are futuristic sounding, but that could someday make the world a radically better place. And that's really what they're looking at here. It's like, let's just come up with something loony. Maybe that's where the name came from, although loons fly, right? So, let's come up with something that just sounds crazy, and we'll try it. And they did with Project Loon. And you might say the same thing about, other innovators who kind of think outside the box, like Elon Musk, and saying, why don't I just launch tens of thousands of satellites up there and we'll get people broadband that way? Well, these guys started before that, looking at doing these, again, weather balloon types of balloons out there doing the same thing. Let's see, this resulted in creation of X, the parent of Taara, which is the laboratory in charge of the moonshot idea. So again, X is probably an area where if you're a free thinker and you can come up with all kinds of crazy ideas, if somebody thinks it might make sense, they'll fund that for you. Taara sees this technology as a way to increase broadband access in areas with little or no broadband access. This is also envisioned as a technology that can provide better backhaul to cell towers and ISP hub sites. The most promising use of the technology is to bring high-speed connection to the many small villages around the world that aren't connected to broadband. So again, primarily, I think a backhaul kind of service. And again, Starlink can help with that as well, but Starlink is going to be a lot more expensive from the standpoint of, deploying satellites obviously is very, very expensive, whereas this seems like a less expensive way to do some of these shorter backhaul links. Again, I could see where they might want to take advantage of Starlink or OneWeb or another satellite, or Amazon Kuiper, some other satellite constellation that might be able to then get that service maybe from for a larger distance, rather than having to do a bunch of whole laser shots or lots of laser shots. So the X website includes several case studies of the technology. In the Congo, the radios were used to beam broadband across the Congo River to make a connection between Brazzaville and Kinshasa. This was a 4.8 kilometer radio hop that is far less expensive than building a fiber route by road of almost 400 kilometers. Wow. Okay. I would think they could have crossed it some other way, but still, I could see where this would be less expensive than fiber regardless. Within the first 20 days after the connection, the backhaul connection through Taara carried almost 700 terabytes of data. So this is the kind of thing that you might do with wireless as well. But this laser, again, being able to do 20 gigabits per second is well suited to a backhaul where you're going to be carrying lots of data. There's a link there to the Taara site, or actually that specific case study. I'm going to look at the Taara site here in a minute. Taara has already been deployed in 13 countries, and Taara is working with major players to quickly expand the use of the technology. This includes deals with Econet Group and its subsidiary Liquid Telecom in Africa, the ISP Bluetown in India, and Digicel in the Pacific Islands. Taara is also now working with Bharti Airtel, one of the largest telecom providers in India, to ramp up distribution. There's also a case study in that as well that they talk about. India has hundreds of thousands of small villages that could be candidates for the technology. In Africa, the rollout of the technology started in Kenya, working with Liquid Telecom, and the Econet Group, I guess. The radios are perceived as the best way to build backhaul in places where it's challenging or dangerous to build fiber networks, such as across rivers, across national parks, or in post-conflict zones. Again, another link there. There are still 2 billion people on the planet who are not connected to the internet. And in most cases, one of the primary impediments to expanding internet services is the lack of affordable and reliable backhaul. The Taara lasers seem like a solution to bring broadband to a huge number of places that have lacked connectivity. So again, I link to this as well as these other sites that I'm going to look at here. So this is Project Loon. So again, you see it looks like a weather balloon. By the way, so it's again, this is Alphabet, Google's parent company, and they've got this innovation incubator, so to speak, called X. And it's very interesting because this was around prior to Elon Musk changing the name of Twitter to X, but I guess he was able to do that. You see the logo here, and I pulled up Twitter, or X. I still call it Twitter. I pulled up X, and the logo's different, but not too that far off. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. So again, this is Project Loon. So you see what that looks like, where you've got these weather balloon-like devices that are able to beam internet down to the ground. So billions of people across the globe still don't have reliable and affordable access to the internet. So this was talking about it. And you see, as you look at Loon, where is it here? It says discontinued. So again, this is no longer a project. Discontinued for good reasons. Again, part of that being, I'm sure, Starlink doing it just at a higher altitude. So you got Project Loon there. You're seeing pictures of balloons. If you want to check that out, I'll link to this. Is there anything else of interest in here? Probably, oh yeah, I talked about the pictures. Oh, building a balloon that lasts. It's more than 300 days. So, wow, this is really hard to keep in where I want it. There we go, building a balloon that lasts. So the Loon team had a lofty goal, designing a balloon that could last for hundreds of days in the harsh conditions of the stratosphere, where winds can reach 100 kilometers per hour and temperatures can drop to minus 90 degrees Celsius, all while delivering constant connectivity. The team spent years refining their designs and eventually set a record with a balloon that flew more than 300 days before it came down to Earth. So, that to me is kind of loony. It's to think of putting technology up there. You're going to provide broadband internet, but then, in 300 days, it's going to be gone. Now, this is not as expensive as a satellite, but, the satellites are kind of doing the same thing. They've got to be out in space where it's even colder, a more harsh environment. And they've got to be able to, once they fail in such a way where they're not causing space debris and debris on Earth. So that's a difficult challenge. And those satellites, I believe their lifetime is around 5 years or so. So that's a challenge for Elon Musk or anybody that's doing the low Earth orbit satellites, is they send those things up. And if they've got like a 5-year lifespan, once they get their constellation up, they're going to have to constantly refresh that with new launches and new satellites. That was kind of the way this was, I'm sure, was they'd put the balloons up and they'd have to be launching balloons on a regular basis to keep that service going. They even talk about launching the balloons and how they had this particular way here to do it more easily. They called it affectionately Chicken Little and Big Bird. These cranes were capable of filling and launching a balloon every 30 minutes into the stratosphere, high above airplanes, birds, and the weather. So, and loons that were flying around as well. That would be birds. So I talked about wind patterns. You had to consider that. And, you see here, they had to kind of figure out how they were going to ride these prevailing winds. You got the scale of the balloon here. So this is an interesting site if you want to check that out. Got solar panels, parachute, onboard parachute allowed for controlled descent and a safe landing. But then here we have X, and this is the new project. This is Taara. And they talk, a similar site here. They talk about the challenge. Again, nearly 3 billion around the people in the world don't have access to internet. Like fiber, but without the cables, Taara uses light to transmit information at super high speeds through the air as a very narrow, invisible beam. Before I got on today, I was going to look and see what the risk was if you happen to run across that beam somehow. I don't know. Yeah, if somebody's flying a kite, would it burn up in midair? If you were on a paraglider, would you burn up in midair? I don't know how strong. I mean, obviously, got to be a strong beam to get that far. It's kind of described as a laser pointer, so unless it hits you in the eye, maybe you're okay. Although I bet it would get kind of warm if it did hit you. So anyway, I've linked to this as well. You can see they've got some animated GIFs here, but I'm going to run a video in a minute that I saw on Reuters site. I'll look at that Reuters article, but tells you a little bit about these devices. They're about the size of a street, what do you call it? Red light, green light system, traffic light. Thank you. There we go. So you can see they've got some information on that. They've got the Congo River thing here. They've got sub-Saharan Africa if you want to look at that use case. So you can check that out. And then I saw this Reuters article from a few months ago. Alphabet bets on lasers to deliver internet in remote areas. So look through this real quick. There's a video on here that I'll actually run for you in a minute. It's very short, so it's only 1:23. So again, you see here Google's parent company doing that. Project known as Taara, initiated in 2016 after attempts at using stratospheric balloons to deliver the internet. So again, that's kind of how it got started. So you never know. You can start on something that seems loony, and then something good comes out of it, and you can move on and do something that makes more sense. Taara executives, one of India's, and Bharti Airtel, one of India's largest telecommunications and internet providers, told Reuters they're now moving toward large-scale deployment of the new laser internet technology in India. Taara is helping to link up internet services in 13 countries, as we mentioned there. We're trying to be one of the cheapest and most affordable place, where you'll be able to get $1 per gigabyte to the end consumers, he said. Taara's machine is the size of traffic lights and beams the laser carrying the data, essentially fiber optic internet without the cables. So you think about that, that's really what fiber optics is, right? You're shooting a beam of light a very long distance, but it's encased in fiber optic cable that's kind of mirrored, so the light can go in there and turn corners, those kinds of things. But and there's going to be some attenuation in that over a period of time, and I'm sure it's the same with the air. That's why you can go 6 miles or so. No, 12 miles. That's right. It was 20 kilometers. So but it's similar in that way. It's using light to communicate the data. And you might think, well, how do you communicate data over light? Well, that's what you're doing with fiber optics. You encode the light and then you decode it on the other end. Again, there's a look at the thing right there. So we call this moonshot composting, and that's where I think he said he had an epiphany while working on the failed balloon internet Project Loon, which used lasers for connecting data between balloons, and brought this technology to the ground. And he says, we call that moonshot composting. In other words, these were two projects that were kind of in this moonshot incubator, and they composted one of them and got something out of it that they could use. X is Alphabet's research division that takes on projects bordering on science fiction. It gave rise to self-driving technology firm Waymo, drone delivery service Wing, and health tech startup Verify Life Sciences. Taara is moving more data every single day than Loon did in its entire history, said Teller, and I could see why. Bharti, Airtel's chief technology officer, Randeep Sekhan, said Taara will also help deliver faster internet service in urban areas in developed countries. He said it's less expensive to beam data between buildings than to bury fiber optic cables. I think this is really disruptive, he said. I'm not quite sure about that. I would think that he'd be talking about there maybe in developing countries where, here in the United States, I think every provider in an urban area is going to be deploying fiber and running that right down the street. So there's hundreds of thousands of these villages across India, he said. I can't wait to see how this technology can come handy to bringing all of those people online. Google in 2020 committed $10 billion for digitizing India and invested $700 million for a 1.28% stake in Bharti Airtel last year. So they're working with Bharti Airtel and they've got a stake in that. So they've got some skin in the game there to make it work. X and Google are sister companies under Alphabet, while Taara's partnership with Bharti Airtel is separate from the Google investment. When asked about the downside of the internet as X and Taara push ahead with their mission to connect the rest of the world, Teller said, "I acknowledge the concept that the internet is imperfect, but I would suggest that may be the subject, or that's maybe the subject of a different moonshot to improve the internet's content." It's interesting he said that, because I looked at the video before I read this whole article, and as I was looking at the video, I was thinking, oh, maybe it's a shame that they're bringing internet to these folks, just because some of the content is so horrible. Do we really want to burden them with that? And just, it can have a really negative impact on culture, unfortunately, we've seen in this country and other places. But why should we hoard that, I suppose, because there really are good aspects to the internet as well, obviously. So there are good things that can be done, and there are bad things that can be done almost with any invention, so to speak. So I just hope that they can handle some of the negative parts better than we have. As I say, there's some definitely negative impacts on being disconnected all the time and everybody having a voice and all of those things that can come with that. So anyway, I thought I'd show you the video that's up here at the top. So let's watch that.
This is as simple as a digital camera with a laser pointer. So you're using the laser pointer to kind of like transmit the electricity, the data from one end to the other end. And on the other end, think of the same digital camera which is receiving that same laser beams and is able to decode it and then convert it into bytes.
We can scout journey.
We are live in 13 countries, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to see every single link that goes down into any one of these countries.
I'm pretty sure he means there every single link that goes up and not every single link that goes down. No internet service provider wants to see a link go down. So I'm sure he's saying he's excited every time a new one is deployed.
And the benefits that the people derive. I go often down to these places and I talk to the end users and see how they experience the internet. It's just been, I get goosebumps every time I talk to these individuals to see the joy that they get. Not just that the fact that they're online, but the quality of the internet and the affordability that they're seeing.
So I think that's really interesting. So again, something that came out of this original balloon idea that turned out to not be viable, especially with satellites again, with the low Earth orbit satellites. But I think great idea. Looking forward to seeing how this spreads. So anyway, if you learned something new today, give me a like on the video. I'd appreciate that. If you're not subscribed to our channel, if you would click the subscribe button, make sure that you ring the little bell, and then you'll be notified when I'm live. Thanks for joining me today for Broadband Deployment News. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.